Alright, let's jump right in. We all rely on our memory, like every single day, right? We treat it like it's this perfect personal archive of our lives. But what if I told you that archive is constantly being rewritten, edited, and sometimes just plain made up? In this explainer, we're going to dig into why your memory is way less reliable than you probably think. I mean, think about it for a second. Do you feel like your mind captures events exactly as they happened? Like a high-def video camera? It's a super common idea that we can just hit play and re-experience the past exactly as it was. Well, science tells a totally different story. Turns out your memory isn't a recording device at all. It's a constructive one. It doesn't just replay the past. It literally rebuilds it every single time. And just like an artist, it takes some liberties, fills in the gaps, and sometimes creates something that feels true, but isn't. So how on earth does this happen? Let's follow the clues. Okay, our first clue is something we all know way too well. Forgetting. We usually think of forgetting as some kind of failure, right? A bug in the system. But what if I told you it's actually the default setting for our brains? So, way back in 1885, this psychologist, Hermann Ebbinghaus, did these incredibly detailed experiments on his own memory. And he found that we lose information shockingly fast if we don't actively try to hang on to it. He mapped it all out in what we now call the forgetting curve. And here's the really important part. Without making an effort to remember something, we lose about half of that new information in just a matter of days. This isn't a glitch, It's a core principle of how memory works. It's basically our brain's way of filtering out stuff that isn't reinforced as important. Psychologist Daniel Schachter actually calls this natural decay transience. It's the first of his famous 7 sins of memory. It's just that simple, steady fading of memory over time. But forgetting isn't just about things passively fading away. Our second clue shows that memory loss is also, well, it's an active battle. Your memories are basically in a constant competition with each other, and sometimes one just shoves the other out of the way. This is what we call interference. And this interference happens in two ways. First, you've got proactive interference. You know that feeling when you're trying to remember a new password, but your brain just keeps stubbornly shouting the old one at you? That's it right there. That's old memories getting in the way of new ones. And then there's the opposite, retroactive interference. This is when you finally memorize your new phone number, and then suddenly, poof, your old one is just gone. The new information has basically paved right over the old. Okay, so memory fades, memories interfere with each other, I get it. But what about those huge, unforgettable moments? The ones that are just seared into our brains with perfect clarity. Surely those have to be reliable. Well, this is where our story takes a really interesting twist. We're talking about what are called flashbulb memories. These are those incredibly detailed, vivid snapshots we all seem to have of where we were and what we were doing when we heard about some major public event. I mean, for a lot of us, hearing about these things created an instant, powerful memory. The name actually comes from a couple researchers back in 1977, Brown and Kulik. They said the memory feels so bright and clear, it's almost as if a mental flashbulb just went off, capturing every single detail of the scene forever. And the reason these memories feel so powerful is all about emotion, the shock, the surprise, the sheer significance of the event. It triggers this flood of hormones that basically tells your brain, hey, pay attention, this is important. Emotion is like a giant highlighter pen for your memory. So they feel perfect. They feel like they're etched in stone. But here's the $1,000,000 question. Are they actually accurate? Are those photographic snapshots really as flawless as they seem? Well, the research on this is just mind-blowing. Scientists tested people's memories over time. A year after the 9/11 attacks, people's confidence in what they remembered was still sky high, but their accuracy, it had dropped a lot. And for the Challenger disaster, after 3 years, people were super confident, but their memories were full of major errors. And this is the real kicker. Our confidence in a memory has almost no connection to how accurate it is. They felt right, but they were wrong. So if even our most vivid, powerful memories can be flat out wrong, what is going on? This brings us to what are called the sins of commission. This isn't when we forget, it's when our memory actually creates a distortion or a total fabrication. And there are three main culprits here. There's misattribution, which is when you remember a fact correctly, but you get the source wrong, like thinking a friend told you something you actually just read online. Then there's suggestibility, which is when outside info, like a leading question, literally changes your memory of an event. And finally, bias. That's our brain's sneaky tendency to edit our past to make it fit with how we feel and see the world today. And this bias, it can be unbelievably powerful. Studies have actually shown that people will remember completely fake news stories if those stories happen to line up with their political beliefs. They'll swear they remember seeing a totally made up event on the news just because it confirms what they already think. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that wouldn't happen to me, get this. In one incredible study from 2015, researchers used suggestive interviews and social pressure to convince people of something. And they got a whopping 70% of participants to create a false memory or belief that they had committed a crime like theft or assault when they were a teenager. That's just how fragile our memories can be. So at this point, you're probably thinking human memory is just a total disaster, right? It forgets, it interferes, it distorts, it lies. But what if all of these so-called flaws aren't flaws at all? What if they're actually features? This amazing quote from Maya Angelou kind of gives us a clue. It helps us pivot from thinking about memory as just a factual record to understanding its deeper purpose. Maybe memory isn't about perfectly remembering what someone said, but about holding on to the emotional core of an experience, how it made you feel. And this is where we see the upside of all these errors. See, a flexible, constructive memory isn't a bug. It lets us grab bits and pieces of our past experiences and recombine them to imagine the future, to solve problems, to be creative. It's an efficient system that tosses out the boring details to save the important emotional lesson, and it helps us weave our messy past into a story that actually makes sense to us now. So here's the real takeaway. The purpose of your memory isn't to be this perfect archive of the past. Its main job, its most important job, is to be an adaptive guide for the future. It gives us all the raw material we need to make better decisions, to anticipate what might happen next, and just to navigate our world. Which leaves us with one last big question. Knowing that all of memory's imperfections are what make it creative, what make it adaptive, what make it human, if you had the chance to trade your messy, creative memory for a perfect, computer-like recording of every single moment, would you really want it?